Have you ever stopped to think about the lost tribes of Israel? What would it take for a part of the story to become a mystery? The intriguing idea that these tribes, which once flourished under the Middle Eastern sun, might be hidden in communities around the world raises questions that defy logic. Many believe that these groups, dispersed across continents and cultures, carry a legacy that could not only rewrite history, but also offer answers to deep questions about our identity and belonging. What if I told you that the story of the lost tribes is not just a distant legend, but a call to action for us today? These stories are intertwined with ancient prophecies, suggesting that a return is not only possible, but inevitable. As we look to the Bible, we find promises that even those who have been forgotten are not beyond divine reach. Can you imagine the transformation this could bring to our understanding of the past and future? After all, the traditions of these lost tribes found can teach us valuable lessons about the resilience of faith and culture. In this text, we will explore the surprising realities of the lost tribes, their global connections, and the role each of us can play in this ongoing narrative. Get ready for a journey that will not only challenge your beliefs, but may also inspire new insight into who we are and where we come from. After all, amidst so many mysteries, what can be revealed when we seek what is hidden? The shocking truth about the lost tribes is about to be revealed, and you won't want to miss out. Imagine the scene: a strong, imposing, unified kingdom under the reigns of David and later his son Solomon. In those times, Israel was practically the beating heart of the region. However, it was enough for Solomon to leave for divisions to form, almost like a wound opening. Soon, the 12 tribes, which stood out as members of the same family of a great lineage, dispersed. 10 of them, which formed the northern kingdom, simply disappeared. It was as if the earth had swallowed them, or as if a veil of mystery had descended over their footsteps. If you think the story stopped there, you are wrong. These tribes, known to this day as the lost tribes of Israel, gained an almost mythical life. Historians, archaeologists, and even adventurers over the centuries have tried to map their trajectories. Where would they have gone? What is the fate of these tribes that, despite being apparently lost, carried promises and prophecies with them? This search, full of uncertainties, still feeds a scenario of beliefs and assumptions that only increases the mystery and attraction for these lost tribes. Now, imagine yourself as someone curious, a kind of explorer of truth. How about investigating a little for yourself? Think of the Bible, where entire passages suggest that these tribes were not forgotten. In fact, they would play an important role in the so-called end times. Many biblical interpreters believe that one day, these tribes will come together, coming from distant lands, to fulfill a greater plan. What if this plain, in which these lost tribes are found, was closer than we imagine? What is impressive is the number of cultures that claim to be descendants of these lost tribes, from Asia to the African continent. There are ancestral traditions that preserve the same faith in a single God, practices that echo the way of life of the ancient Israelites. How to explain this? Could it be a coincidence? Or is there a hidden truth waiting to be discovered? It is not a purposeless curiosity. It's almost as if these traditions are clues on an ancient map, inviting us to look beyond appearances and seek connections. These lost tribes of Israel are not just part of an ancient story. They provoke us, make us think about our own search for belonging and identity. Could it be that, like them, we also have a path to be discovered? What if the answer to some of our questions about who we are and where we come from were hidden in these traditions and mysteries? Stay tuned, because the journey is just beginning. Imagine the impact of discovering that the lost tribes of Israel may have left descendants in various parts of the world. Suddenly, we find communities in places as diverse as Ethiopia and India, which, to this day, claim to carry the traditions and blood of the ancient Israelites. These people, called global descendants of the lost tribes, maintain a living and authentic legacy, even if centuries and continents away. Each of them brings with it stories, practices, and even rituals that echo the traditions of Israel, almost as if the culture had never been lost. Ethiopia, for example, is home to the Bene Israel, a community of Ethiopian Jews who preserve customs that date back to ancient times. Imagine visiting an Ethiopian village and witnessing celebrations that evoke scenes from the Old Testament. In India, the Bene Israel maintain traditions that resemble Israelite practices, even after so many generations living between different cultures. What fascinates most is how these communities proudly preserve their identities, despite the distances and centuries that separate them from ancient Israel. Now, think. What makes a culture survive like this, intact in the midst of a sea of changes? It is as if every tradition, every prayer kept, is an anchor for these lost tribes found throughout time. Traditions passed down from generation to generation carry a strength of belonging so deep that it transcends physical barriers. Perhaps the lesson here is the strength of knowing where we come from, and how, even in the face of challenges and dispersion, our essence can survive. If we think about it, this is a truth that we can all apply. Most intriguingly, this search for global descendants is not just a historical enigma. It is also a spiritual quest. Who are we, after all, and where did we come from? These questions go beyond any single culture and are reflected in the experiences of many other communities around the world. What makes this discovery exciting is the realization that perhaps each of us is connected in some way to this shared past. Finally, the feeling is that these lost tribes, despite being dispersed, never stopped being part of a whole. They spread, yes, but they took with them the essence of a greater identity that seems to survive at any distance. By connecting dots around the globe, these descendants prove that no matter where we are, there's always a connection to the past, a history that pulses in our roots and that only tends to make us see more deeply. Since ancient times, biblical prophecies have spoken about the return of the lost tribes of Israel. Although these tribes were dispersed to distant lands, sacred texts guarantee that they were not forgotten by God. In essence, it is as if the Bible has cast a promise, an invisible thread linking these tribes to a crucial future role. This prophesied return brings an intriguing idea. When the tribes finally come together, they will be contributing to a decisive stage in the divine plan for humanity. You can even imagine the impact of this, right? Some scholars claim that the return of these tribes represents a rebirth of Israelite identity. For those who believe in these prophecies, the return is not only physical, but also spiritual, as if each member of these tribes is awakening an ancient calling. Imagine someone who spent their entire life unaware of their origins and suddenly discovers an ancestral connection that changes their purpose. This is the type of reunion that the scriptures suggest, a transformation that touches both the body and the spirit, marking these people's lives forever. It is impressive to think that these prophecies, kept for centuries, continue to arouse curiosity and even inspire modern movements. In such a fragmented world, the idea of a sacred union is even more appealing. The return of the lost tribes would be like a reunion with an essential part of humanity that seemed forgotten. This vision, which combines an ancient promise with a contemporary quest, makes the prophecies come to life, almost like an ongoing story that we can all witness and perhaps participate in some way. For those who believe, these prophecies serve as a compass to understand the direction of their own lives. And it's not just a question of faith, but of identity. The idea that the tribe's return is part of a larger plan has many people wondering about their own role in this plot. What lessons can these lost tribes offer us? Who knows? Perhaps their return can illuminate paths that seemed obscured, bringing clarity about who we are and our mission in this world. Thus, the return of the lost tribes would not only be the closing of a cycle, but the beginning of a new era. As these prophecies begin to unfold, curiosity grows. Will this return help us resolve issues facing our generation? Do we have anything to learn from these lost and found tribes? The story is far from over, and the answers may be one step away from being revealed. Around the world, there are notable groups who proudly claim descent from the lost tribes of Israel, carrying traditions and stories that echo the practices of the ancient Israelites. A fascinating example is that of the Bene Israel, the Ethiopian Jews, who maintain customs similar to those of the Old Testament. Imagine the ceremonies and prayers, the same ones that echoed in the times of David and Solomon, surviving to this day in the heart of Ethiopia. Each prayer and each celebration seems to tell a chapter in the saga of survival and faith, something that impresses those who witness it. But it is not only in Africa that we find these ancient echoes. In India, the Bene Israel claim Israelite descent, with practices that reflect an ancient heritage. Think about the strength of maintaining traditions so far from their origin, as if each custom were a flame protected from the wind. On Indian soil, they preserve prayers and dietary practices that resemble those of ancient Israel, for those with attentive eyes. It is almost like seeing their own living history, pulsating in every detail of their lives. Among the mountains and valleys of Afghanistan and Pakistan, the Pashtun also claim ties with the tribes of Israel, passing from generation to generation stories that mix with legends and faith. The oral tradition they maintain is rich, and their stories suggest that, even in the midst of Islamic culture, they respectfully guard traces of what would be an Israelite heritage. Are these stories just myths? Or are they telling us something profound about connections that cross borders and survive time? In Nigeria, Igbo Jews also stand out, asserting ties to lost tribes and maintaining rituals that resemble those of the Israelites. Even though they are separated by seas and continents, they find identity in this ancestral connection. What makes this all intriguing is the ability of these traditions to persist. It is not just rites, but a history kept alive in the practices, beliefs, and way of living of these people. It's as if each gesture is a reminder of the past, something that helps them connect with a sacred origin. These groups show that the search for lost tribes is not just a historical curiosity. It is a reminder of how faith and culture can cross centuries and continents without losing their essence. Each keeps a part of Israel's story alive, offering the world glimpses of a greater truth. But this saga does not end here, as there are still discoveries and mysteries to be unraveled about these lost tribes found. The restoration of the lost tribes of Israel has a profound meaning that goes beyond the simple reunion of scattered groups. Many religious traditions believe this restoration is part of a messianic prophecy, a sign of things to come. Imagine the impact it would have to see these tribes return, as if they were pieces of a puzzle that finally fit together. This vision brings a sense of hope, as if we are on the cusp of a spiritual and cultural renaissance that could change the face of the world. One of the signs of this renaissance is the reemergence of the Cohen haplotype, a genetic marker that appears among the Lemba of Africa. By being recognized as descendants of the ancient Israelites, this community not only connects with their heritage, but also presents tangible proof that biblical promises are still relevant. It's almost as if science and faith intertwine, creating a space where history becomes part of current life. Imagine the emotion of a Lemba when discovering that, genetically, they are part of such a significant lineage. This restoration is a way of rewriting the narrative of history, reminding everyone that dispersal does not imply oblivion. The lost tribes found is not just a concept. They are a call to action for many. As we reflect on the traditions and stories these communities hold, we are inspired to investigate our own roots and understand that we belong to something greater. And this is a lesson that we can all apply to our lives. Seek connections, respect traditions, and, above all, value what unites us. As more people become interested in these stories, the importance of restoration becomes increasingly evident. It's like an echo that reverberates through time, challenging us all to recognize that, even in a world so divided, there is a legacy that connects us. These descendants, with their practices and beliefs, are contributing to a future where diversity is celebrated and identities are respected. Thus, the restoration of the lost tribes is not just a return to the past. It is a bridge to the future. The story of these tribes reminds us that what may seem lost may actually be waiting to be rediscovered. And just as these tribes come together, perhaps it is time for us to look around us and do the same. Find the connections that unite us as the next part of this journey awaits us. As we explore the lost tribes found, it becomes clear that this is not just a question of history or faith, but a journey of self-discovery and reconnection. What lessons can these communities teach us about resilience, identity, and the search for legacy? As each of us reflects on our roots, we are challenged to consider what it truly means to belong. These stories of connection and hope not only inspire us, they also push us to take action, to seek our own connections, and to better understand our place in the world. What if you could somehow connect with this narrative? What steps could you take to explore your own origins and discover the traditions that have shaped who you are? How about starting to talk to your family about your stories? Knowing our roots can be the first step towards significant personal transformation. The Lost Tribes Found offer us an incredible opportunity to reevaluate our own identity and purpose. So, how about not just staying on the surface? This is the time to dive deep into the search for truth, for your truth. And if you want to continue this learning journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This way, you'll stay up to date with everything that's coming about the lost tribes and other mysteries that could change the way you see the world. Get ready for a path full of discoveries, where each step can lead to a new understanding.